Welcome back to the Long Free Ride. You find us sitting in traffic on our way around Chichester. Nothing new there. We are heading down to sort of the Poole Harbour area where we're going to spend a week with members of Michelle's family. Doesn't look that great on the weather forecast, but we'll have to see. Looks like it could be lots and lots of very heavy showers, but time will tell. But this is a place that Michelle's family has been to, I would say countless, but you probably could count them, but many, many times before.
Yeah, it's a very remote cottage. I've got very happy memories there. So there's sort of lots of forest and a couple of beaches and lots of water activities normally, although it's now mid-October or end of October, so we won't be in the water that much, I don't think.
No, I haven't even brought any swimming gear, so unless I go skinny dipping, there will be no swimming for me.
I think I have, in one of the many bags in the back of the car.
Yes. Those observant viewers will wonder how we've ended up with so much feces in the back of my car. But
don't be rude.
The reality is that on this particular trip, although we're going away for a week rather than a month, it would seem we have 3 times as much stuff. And that's probably my fault because I was producing the catch-up video this week, and so I didn't spend a lot of time listening to Michelle telling me all the things that we're going to need to get into the car. But yes, wonderful, isn't it?
Well, it's a week self-catering, so, you can take stuff.
Do we have a £400 Tesco delivery arriving?
Yes.
Yes.
Are we feeding lots of people through the week?
Yes. I'm just saying, it's not, we haven't got all the food. Have we got a box with about 60 containers in it containing pink stars and...
Yes,
sticky jewels and
crafting, because it's going to rain, so I won't be out walking much and stuff. It's going to be dark at 4:30.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah. Makes me happy.
Yes, it does make you happy. So anyway, we will catch you up at the Tesla supercharger that we're going to visit, which is one of the ones that we use as we head along the south coast, but we don't particularly like. But we'll tell you more about that when we get there. So you join us at the Havant supercharger. It's tipping down with rain. And as if you've watched all our videos, as you know, this isn't one of our favourites. It is just on an industrial estate in pretty much the middle of nowhere. So you can't go and find anything to eat or do anything while the car's charging. It is one of those places that you have to sit in your car and update your Facebook or do whatever it is that you do.
Picnic.
Car picnic in this case, yes. So we have our bottles of drink from a garage, and well, it wasn't too bad a sandwich, was it? You quite enjoyed yours.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, this is one of the perils of owning and running an EV is that there will be times that you do end up just sitting there in your car while you charge.
That's okay. We've started a new audiobook.
Well, yes, there's always the in-car entertainment. If you had a more modern Tesla than mine, you could be playing movies or whatever. I expect I could do that on my tablet if I really wanted to. But yeah, I was going to film outside, but being as it's raining, I'm not going to bother. Maybe on the way back we'll do it. But anyway, Elon's filling us up for free again, which is always good of him.
Yeah, so we're at 65% now.
Yeah, we'll probably go in a minute. We'll have plenty when we get there. But we will be charging on basically a 3-pin plug where we're going because
the cottage is remote.
It is in the middle of
nowhere.
And
that's my mobile ringing now as well. That's probably the family again.
Right then, we'll catch you later.
Bye.
The M27 and then the A31 just had the usual hold-ups in the usual sort of places. But the constant heavy showers meant there was a lot of spray and poor visibility as we drove. Having crossed the New Forest, we were soon on the outskirts of Bournemouth and heading for the Sandbanks area, home of the rich and famous, and more importantly, the ferry that we would need to cross the harbour. The weather had begun to brighten up a bit, but showers were never too far away. The Sandbanks area of Poole Harbour is popular for kite surfing and windsurfing, but it seemed pretty empty as we drove towards the ferry. Perhaps it was just the changeable conditions, or maybe the wind was from the wrong direction. Who knows? When we joined the line of cars queuing for the ferry, I jumped out to get some footage.
So I'm on the Sandbanks Ferry, and just as we arrived there was a queue and we couldn't even see where you depart on the ferry. John said, "Oh, I'm going to get out of the car and get some footage," and he hasn't actually made it back into the car. So I jumped into the driving seat. Traffic started moving literally for less than 4 minutes after he left me, and yes, so I'm on the ferry, he's on as a foot passenger, but we're so tightly packed there's no way he can make it back to the car to get in. So I'm going to have to drive the car off the ferry to the other side and find somewhere to pull over and pick him up. Or not, but it's a bit of a long walk, so we will see where we get to. Anyway, we're nearly there now. It's a short crossing and it's a chain link ferry. So although I can feel the ferry bobbing about, it's just being pulled. Very clever. I'm sure there's some scientific background to it and some history, but I've never looked into that.
The road from the ferry splits after a few miles, and about half the traffic headed into Swanage, whilst we headed towards Corfe Castle. The road climbs onto higher ground and there's a fantastic viewpoint. In years gone by, I always hoped my parents would stop at this place, because it often had an ice cream van parked there. And there was always a really small chance that Mum and Dad would buy us an ice cream. However, we normally trucked on by and my hopes were dashed.
This area is designated an area of outstanding natural beauty, and in one of those weird twists of fate, it also happens to be Western Europe's largest onshore oil field. To get to our accommodation, we will need to pass a couple of the drill sites. Known as Witch Farm, this oil and gas development came online in 1973 and has a permit to continue extraction till 2037. At its peak, it was producing over 100,000 barrels a day. That's about 10% of the UK's consumption. But nowadays, it's around about 18,000 barrels per day. The extraction sites are quite well hidden within the landscape, but like all riches that are pulled up from the earth, it's not been without the occasional mishap. Anyway, we'll be passing one of these sites, so we'll show you something later. The area around the accommodation is private property and accessed via a series of gates and barriers. This adds even more to the feeling of remoteness. But as I said earlier, Tesco's will deliver if they can find the place.
The last half a mile up to the cottage door is unmade road. This changed when we got the oil well, they tarmacked the roads. But before then, the unmade road would go on for what seemed like ages and ages when we were children, and it was always very, very bumpy with potholes. This road follows the path of an old tramway, and it used to transport clay in the past. It was dug from local hills and then shipped across the harbour to the famous Poole pottery, as well as destinations as far away as Liverpool. And this really was from the quay at the end of the tracks at the cottage. The property we're staying in is what you might call the station at the end of the line. There's even a set of wheels from one of the clay wagons, and they're sadly rusting away now, but they're still there to remind you of the purpose of this building in years gone by. Although we can now get mobile signal and 4G data, there's no landline or internet access at the property, and for many of us, that's totally part of its charm.
To give you a better idea of this beautiful place, here's some drone footage to give you an idea of the cottage's location in Poole Harbour. Those of you that are eagle-eyed might even be able to spot some of the oil drilling infrastructure in amongst the trees as the drone climbs higher. This area of the harbour is known as Goathorn Point. There was a concern that our Tesco delivery wasn't going to happen, as the driver had taken a wrong turn and in trying to back up, he'd ended up with a wheel in a ditch. But he got recovered, and the ladies got their wine, the men got their beer, the children got their pizza, and a riot was averted. The next morning was dry, but rain was forecast later. The family had decided a walk was in order, minus Michelle, who had been ill during the night and was still sleeping. It was the first time we'd stayed in the autumn, and I was amazed at the amount of wild mushrooms, or probably toadstools, that there were as we wandered through the forest tracks. I'm no botanist, but I'd have to say that very few of them looked that appetising. But if you know your UK fungi, then drop us a comment below and let us know which one of these on the grid might be worth cooking up. What could possibly go wrong? There were a couple of fishermen using a small boat to hoover up clams from the shallow waters of the bay. When the tide goes out, strange circles can be seen in the muddy sand where the hoover has been. They're gone after a couple of tides, and they're not evidence of alien landings. Our route took us past one of the pumping sites, which had an alarm blaring for about half an hour during our walk. But all there was to see when we arrived were the donkeys slowly nodding away. Whilst looking to see if any of the sweet chestnuts were big enough to roast, I came across this little chap. To my mind, he seemed somewhat lost, but who am I to know? The wind was beginning to pick up on the southern side of the point, and the clouds on the horizon were beginning to look ominous, so it was time to head back to the shelter of the cottage for a mug of tea and some cake. As the rain battered the windows, Michelle's sister-in-law and her girls got to carving pumpkins ready for Halloween, which was only a few days away. They looked great, and everyone could still count to 10 afterwards, so no visits to A&E were required. There was even the occasional rainbow between each of the heavy rain showers. I had been informed on the previous evening by Michelle's youngest niece that I would need to make my chocolate croissant star for breakfast today, as they had to head home at lunchtime and it wouldn't be fair if they didn't get to have some. Guys, if you want a quick way to impress in the kitchen, this has to be it. It's more like DIY than cooking. Get 3 packs of pre-made dough, a bit of plain flour and some Nutella. The rest is squashing, plastering and a bit of geometry. There are loads of videos on YouTube, but you'll get the idea here.
If you haven't done so before, please like this video and subscribe to our channel.
As always, it didn't take long for the star to disappear. We'd never seen the quay underwater before, but spring tides and a southwesterly wind had it submerged for a while pretty much every day of our stay. It's when you see spectacles like this that you really appreciate the pull the sun and the moon have on the earth. The rain kept coming, but we still found some time for a brief walk before lunch and saying goodbye to Michelle's brother and his family as they had work and school on the Monday. During the afternoon, the weather did improve for a while, and after the whirlwind of Michelle's nieces had passed, we all had a quiet afternoon as we waited for another couple of guests to arrive. The cottage sleeps 10 comfortably, so there's always room for people to come and go during the week. Another, more ominous arrival was also being forecast by the weatherman. It was the third named storm of the season. It had been called Kieran, and the UK was being told to be prepared for disruption and flooding. The power's out. The storm is raging.